Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. I've got a question here from Vegas 9440, who I believe is a longtime viewer of the channel. And Vegas asks us, why would someone file a discrimination case in state court versus federal court? Well, in fact, made a list, and we're going to go ahead and answer that question. In most of the country, the answer is you wouldn't. However, in certain jurisdictions and certain situations, it's the right move. The number one reason, starting at the highest, most likely, the most compelling reason to file in state court is the jury pool. I'll give you an example. If you're in federal court in New York City, you're pulling a jury pool from multiple boroughs and counties. Some of those counties are in Long Island, could be Westchester, could be Staten Island. And some of those counties, demographically, statistically, aren't always the most friendly to certain protected classes. Some of those counties, boroughs, whatever you want to call them, might actually lean a little bit employer friendly, believe it or not. But if you're in the Bronx, New York, well, that jury pool tends to be one of the most employee friendly in the nation for a variety of socioeconomical and demographic reasons, which we won't delve into here. When you're in the Bronx State Court with an employment discrimination case, defense counsel can say lots of things, but all the plaintiff's counsel really needs to say is, yeah, sure, you want to try this case in front of a Bronx jury? Because I do, right? And it's just, listen, they're going to cut a check. Your client might or might not agree to the check, but they're going to try to cut a check, right? So jury pool, number one reason. Second reason, judge shopping, judge pool. There's certain areas of the nation where you might look at your potential pool of federal judges, and you might say to yourself, well, this particular protected class I have, I don't know if 70-80% of these judges necessarily sympathize and empathize with the members of this given protected class in my case in quite the fashion that I might hope they would. I can think of one federal judge in particular who has, let me be specific, because there's a couple federal judges I know who have uniforms from the Civil War or Civil War paraphernalia in their offices. But everyone either has paraphernalia from the correct side, we'll call it the non-slavery side, or they have a balanced presentation, very historical leaning of both sides. But there is one judge that I've heard rumors of who has historical artifacts in her or his chambers, but only from the, we'll call it the slavery leaning side, the pro-slavery side, the wrong side of history, so to speak, right? And listen, I'm not saying that you know something about that judge based on that. History is funny. People like historical things, but I am saying I can think of a variety of different kinds of cases that I don't particularly want to bring in front of that judge. Call it my own prejudice, my own assumptions, right? And so, the judge pool, right? It can be a problem in certain parts of the country. Federal judges, they serve for a very long time. Sometimes you might have a very, very old judge pool. And that very, very old judge pool might have some very, very old notions. about, we'll call them human rights and basic decency. So sometimes you might look at that judge pool at the federal level and say, well, how are the state laws? Are the state laws pretty good? Because sure, you could bring the state laws in federal court along with the federal claims most of the time, but if the state laws are pretty good, and if the state laws are pretty good, and you got a pretty good jury pool on the state level, and you got a much better judge pool on the state level, well, I mean, you got to think about it, right? Number 3, and this is perhaps one of the most common, is not the most compelling, although it certainly can be, situationally. But one of the most common reasons why people bring cases in state court coughing up a storm, they blow their federal statute of limitations. That could mean they blow the 180 or 300 days they have time, they have to get filed in the EEOC, or after the EEOC, they blow the 90-day window for the right to sue letter. So either one can just straight up kill most of your federal claims, and you might determine it's no longer worthwhile to file in federal court at all. But on the state level, you might have a longer statute of limitations. You might just go file in state court. Very common. See it all the time. Number 4. You've got a federal court system that pulls a large geographic area for its jury pool. And you've got yourself a defendant that is in a small geographic area, incredibly unpopular. Let's, somebody who like shut down a mine and made an entire town's worth of people unemployed. Or a company who poisoned the town's water supply. You get it. Like they've done things in a small geographic area, and the state court pulls primarily, heavily, from that small geographic area. And I'm not saying we would never seek to put together a prejudicial jury. We want a fair jury. We want a fair verdict. We want truth and justice. But my job is to win for my clients. And I've got a very unpopular defendant, and I can narrow some portion, statistically, get a bigger portion of our fact finders from that area. Well, something to consider, I think, right? Number 5, better local rules. Sometimes this can just be better procedure, a faster docket. Sometimes there's some evidentiary rules that are beneficial for a case. These things matter. These things can add up, and you might be looking at a given rule in federal court and just be like, that's not the best for us. Or like, listen, there's some federal court systems that are really experienced with like forensic IT discovery, and there's some that don't have as much knowledge about that. But if you're in like Silicon Valley and your case essentially hangs in the balance upon some forensic IT stuff, and you've got good laws in California and a fairly good jury pool, well, you might go to the court that deals with a lot of forensic IT issues because it's in Silicon Valley, right? And listen, in New York City, this isn't an issue. The federal court system is very good with forensic IT. They got a lot of thoughts, right? E-discovery is well built out in New York. But it's not everywhere. Not to the same extent. It's all relative. And so things like that can matter a lot and need to be thought about, right? And stuff like this granular, detail-driven stuff, I hope you pause for a moment. And when I'm a little bit I don't want to be rude on the channel. I don't think I'm rude, but like when I say things on the channel, like, listen, I'm not going to be able to explain this to you. It's because there's so many moving pieces, right? Like, why would you be in this court? Well, 9 months from now, I'm going to have a forensic IT vendor, and I want them to have 8 weeks to work on this case. And I'm worried they might not get 8 weeks to work on this case, or they might not get the access I want because the judge might not understand or the local rules might not provide. And whew, yeah, that's something you got to think about when you're filing, not when it's happening, right? And when I say things like, yeah, I don't know that you're going to get caught up and necessarily grasp everything from a YouTube channel, it's because there's so many moving pieces that it's impossible to convey the totality of the considerations, the totality of the moving parts present in a case like this in one video or 10 videos or 100 videos. It's just not viable. It just can't be done. Frankly, it can't even be. There's no firm who gets it all perfect. Listen, when I say that, there is no firm in this country that I think gets everything perfect every time. No firm, right? So you're looking for the best, the closest to perfect, the best practice, right? As close to perfect as you can get. But like, even the people who do this hundreds of times per year, they're going to occasionally forget to consider something. Because there's a couple thousand moving parts to a case. Or more. Just realistically, right? So Vegas 9440, I hope all is well. But that is one of the reasons, well, I guess 5 of the reasons, why you might choose to file in state court instead of federal court. I hope it was helpful. If it was, like, subscribe, comment down below, share our channel so it may grow.